And we will establish a forum. So, all right. Dr. Chawla is absent. Her mother is ill. She's been in the hospital all week. Donna Burke, I'm here. Dr. Wong, present. Sid Brandine, here. Martha Garcia, here. Lynn Calrucci,
Here.
Deborah McIntyre, here. Rachel Michelin, here. Mark Moradami, here. Maria Salazar Sperber, here. And David Turetsky,
Here.
I'm going to call for public comment on items that are not on the agenda. Seeing any, we'll move to agenda 3. Welcome everyone. We'll be following the agenda pretty closely today. We will have a slight change around 11 o'clock. We're going to conduct an interview and then we'll get back on schedule. I'd like to welcome everyone and provide the people, the public, to introduce themselves, please.
Kara Forges of the California Optometry Association.
Hi, I'm Anna. I'm here for an interview.
Sonia Logman from Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency.
Colleen Hannigan, licensed optician. I'm here for an interview as well.
And then for
Joe Burt, Department of Consumer Affairs.
staff, Sheree Kimball, enforcement analyst.
Kelly Flores, Enforcement Analyst.
And then for the people at the dais that have not introduced themselves.
Jessica Seekman, Executive Officer.
Good morning, everybody. Kurt Hepler, Supervising Counsel, Department of Consumer Affairs.
Thank you. And our 2017 board meeting dates and locations. We have Oakland tentatively scheduled for August and proposing Riverside for November.
So members, the last November meeting, it just had November 3rd as the agreed upon date. However, in order to accommodate the mobile clinic discussion that the board wanted for the whole board meeting, we're proposing that it be added on to the date before. That's why you see the asterisk after November 2nd. So we're asking that that's the date that the board is okay with. If not, then we just have to suggest a different date and we can accommodate that as well.
Is that going to be a full day or a half day?
I don't imagine it taking a half day. I don't think it would take a full discussion. So, but I don't know if the board believes like a full day. Would you rather it be scheduled for a full day?
We haven't even set the definition of what a mobile.
I mean, I will just say that when we had our discussion at the Ledge Reg Committee, and once you start on one aspect, then suddenly it sparks another aspect, and you keep kind of, so I think there's a lot of pieces to it. I think our recommendation, and Maria, correct me, was almost dividing up the issue into different work groups that different board members could work on and then come back, because there's just really a lot of, because to your point, we haven't even defined what a mobile clinic is.
So that's a full day.
So I think allowing time to have, I mean, if we finish early, we can have dinner or something, but.
Okay. So the November 2nd time frame is fine with everyone, and they can put it on the calendar. So plan for November 2nd and 3rd in the lovely city of Riverside. We'll move on to approval of board meeting, starting with October 21, and I'll go through each date just in case we have some issues. All right, October 21st, have you had an opportunity to review the minutes? And if so, I'll entertain a motion for approval. Yes.
Sorry, starting with October 31st.
Starting from October 21st, 2016.
Yeah.
Move.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Do we have to have an individual roll call?
Well, going forward, we can, we'll just, for this, we'll just suggest that all members present will be co-present.
Thank you. November 4th,
I have comments. And on page 9, please. Under this discussion item number 5 on OE Tractor. We actually had more than a presentation by the program manager. The board discussed the motion that was presented on the agenda and engaged in a discussion regarding collaboration with DCA's IT department, which seems to have been missing from the minutes. And also the potential integration with use with Breeze, as well as other items have to encourage collaboration using the current state product.
So Ms. Bramman, are you saying that that was part of the actual motion or just part of the discussion topics of part?
It's the subsequent 5 and 6. So it was on 6, where it says no action was taken, 5 on no action was taken on this agenda item.
But then on 6, they said that to be control.
I understand, so does that have to be clarified? That no action was taken?
Under agenda item 6?
Under 5. So under 5, and then I thought that in 6, from what our discussion was that then Rachel then proposed that we look into Breeze and have staff look and see if we could use Breeze to.
Correct.
so there was no action taken on the presentation, and then there was discussion. Okay. Is everyone fine with that? Seems clear to me. What else? Did you have other items, Sid?
Just a wordsmith on page 12, first line. Options are to remove board composition. Options are to remove board composition.
I have a question. It says the informal votes. Why is it informal?
Because there wasn't a formal motion made, it was just that we went down the road to find out what the members would like. There were options. So that, I think that's what Steph meant when they said informal, because there wasn't a formal motion made.
Any other comments regarding the November 4th, 2016?
A quick question, that is, it's not with the minutes itself, but on page 8, it's mentioning that staff is going to move forward with the mailing to all optometrists in the state. I was just wondering if that occurred.
Not yet.
Okay.
On the minutes then, can I entertain a motion for approval of the November 4th, 2016 with the correction that attached?
I motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Any discussion, further discussion? Public comment? All right. All in favor?
You can vote that way as long as all members on the agenda having their votes recorded as aye. Okay?
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. November 4th is passed. January 26, 27, 2017.
I have one comment. In an effort to reduce the amount of work the staff has to do producing these minutes, they should generally be action minutes and any discussion that is recorded. I think is, we should be judicious in putting in an amount of discussion. And for example, if there's a staff presentation and materials are part of the written record, I don't think there's any need to go into depth in the minutes to repeat that. So for example, and I'm not picking on Kurt, but
Everybody else does, yeah.
there's a couple of paragraphs of what Kurt said, and this is all out of his written material. So I don't think it needs to be repeated in minutes. We saw, we have written materials, and things like action items that the board requested, questions that the board has that says, staff to bring back information should be in the minutes, but I don't think this is necessary in similar kind of things.
So Mr. Martelli, then, for example, on page 21, number 11, in your mind would be sufficient to say, Mr. Heffler discussed the contents of his memo, and it was provided in the packet, and
Yeah,
nobody had any questions, or something.
yes.
Yeah, even like the executive officer's report, I mean, we get a written report usually. I agree with Mark.
So I think that the struggle that staff is having is because there was a motion way back in April, I believe, that moved the board into just action minutes. And then, so we proposed action minutes, but I think then we got feedback that you still want additional, whatever discussions were happening, at least recap what discussions were talked about. So I think that they don't know at this point how much information is too much, what is not enough, and so I think that's the struggle.
So I get that, and in my mind, I guess one of the demarcations is if it's a staff presentation, and this presentation doesn't really add anything to the materials,
Okay.
we don't need anything. I will say that in the discussion of the sunset report, I found that the recounting of the discussions among the board members was helpful, because I can recount that, right? But so there's a balance of there's also need for promptness. So if it takes a long time for the staff to put together the minutes, then it's not useful for us,
Right.
because it may be great minutes, but the issues have already passed.
Right.
Right, so there's that balance. But I would focus when it's the minutes, I would focus on what the board wants. And sometimes if there's an in-depth discussion, then it'd be helpful. And
Okay.
a substantive issue. I know that's kind of vague, but those are my standards.
And as far as promptness, that's why we have Kelly here too, to help with minutes and report them as they happen. So hopefully we can take care of that.
Well, because I think to piggyback on Mark's comments. I think that was one of the issues, and I know we're working on it, is why I think all of the meetings need to be on the website, so that if a board member, I mean, there have been some things that have been missed in the minutes. Lately, we've missed motions, there's been discussions that haven't been included, and I think to be able to go back as a board member and see on the website, here's the teleconference call, here's the whatever, then I agree with Mark in terms of we could do the action minutes. Until I think we clear that up, I think we need to make sure that we have a good representation, because there's no way for the public even to go back and verify what went on in a meeting. The only document they have to go off of is the minutes. So until we make sure that the minutes are and everything is accessible, I think we need to figure out how to make that work.
My view, the way I use it is it's kind of like the table of contents, and I want to know what the in-depth discussions were. I'll look on the video and watch the video. So it don't have to be a transcript.
Yeah, exactly. But I think
It's a work in progress. Staff is taking the feedback. As stated, we do now have someone here who's actually taking the minutes down instead of relying solely on the recording. So we'll continue to make progress.
But we're going to make sure that all our teleconference meetings are now going to be recorded, correct? And that's going to be put up on the website. And that'll be going forward, or is that? Okay.
All right, so back to approval of the January 26, 27 meetings. Any other discussion?
Item number 6, and that's on page 18. Fellow member Sid Bramhorn commented that committee assignments were given out at the last meeting, but were not given out, but were not announced nor discussed, was my comment. It also stated, that the president assured that this item would be on the next agenda, and I don't see it on this agenda.
Okay, we can make that change.
So it's a second given out to change to announce or discuss.
Okay.
They were not announced or discussed.
Additional upgrades?
I have 118 future agenda items. I did ask that we vote on future agenda items, that specifically, and that's not reflected in the minutes. It has a request from Ms. Berg. It says the mobile clinics, which I asked, Dr. Turetsky asked for something, and I asked that specifically that going forward, the board votes on future agenda items. That's not reflected in the minutes.
We will add that. Any other upgrades? All right, we have two upgrades that the staff needs to record. Are you comfortable with voting? Okay, so it's any public comment? All right, so I'll entertain a motion then to, all right.
I'll second it.
And the motion would be to essentially amend these, have staff check on the amended according to the webcast, correct? Did you guys go check that or correct?
No, to amend and approve as amended.
Okay, never mind.
Yeah. All right.
I have a question before we move on. So the last edit, Rachel, you made a comment. Did we have a motion or take a vote on any changes on that?
No.
We just had a discussion about it.
So we talked at the end on future agenda items, we talked about, and that's where everyone, and I asked after Dr. Turetsky on the online refraction issue, that we also start voting on future agenda items, and we discussed that. And that's not reflected in here.
All right. All in favor?
But we have I have Mark Moser, we made the motion.
Right.
And with the second?
Oh, I think.
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you.
All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? February 22nd, 2017. Yes.
I have a question. I don't know, I had attended with a location, and I'm wondering about the entire meeting. Is it my understanding for clarification that public comment needs to be, I mean, locations have to be where the public could make comments, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, well, on Sherman Oaks, there was no signage to get in there. I did attend it. And you had to be buzzed in to get in there. So and there was no public person there. I don't think that the location was designed so that public could be there.
Okay.
So your question is the meeting even valid?
Yeah, it's even valid in that region.
According to the team.
Right, there.
Going back to the team, I would have to do some research on it. Generally speaking, a violation of the Bagley Keene Act makes the action voidable, meaning somebody has to bring an action and challenge it. But before I do that, I'd probably want to brush up on the research because I wasn't aware that there was a compromise in that situation. Are you suggesting that, Ms. Garcia, that it really was not accessible to the public?
I am suggesting that because even when I got there, there was no signage. It was a closed apartment building, and there was just a sticky note saying Ruby buzz this number, and I did. So when I was buzzing, and I was asked to go, I think it was the second or third floor. Still no signage.
Was there an agenda posted or anything?
When I got into the location, that's the only place.
Okay. Members, why don't we pass on, if I can suggest legally, why don't we pass on this issue? Because I feel a little bit uncomfortable given that set of facts, offering an opinion on whether the meeting was valid and the applicant makes it a challenge. And I think it'd probably be better if we just pass, and I can get back to you because it seems to be a little bit incongruous to approve the minutes of a meeting that may be
Right.
somewhat suspect, so.
And perhaps we could do some further research into what occurred as well, because it was my understanding there was signage posted. So we can do some research and find out.
Okay.
All right. Let's move to March 20th.
I have one, change. This is on page 40 of, the main document, but I guess it's,
So page 40? What page?
40 in my packet.
40, okay.
Okay. And if you look, there's a very long paragraph on that page. The relevant discussion says Mr. Morigami does not believe licensing of the laws. But I think I meant to say the text of the laws much. He believes a fact sheet would be more helpful.
Okay. All right.
Than the actual text of the laws.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, that's what I meant to say.
Further upgrades to the March 20th minutes. If there are none, I'll let you know.
I move.
Second.
Any discussion? Public comment? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Oh, same, yes.
Dr. Wong, you're not.
Dr. Wong was not in attendance.
And all the members of your employees tonight.
And the March 23rd, 2017 minutes.
A second.
I have a motion to approve and a second. Public comment? All right, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? We're done with the minutes. We'll bring back the February 27th. All others will be recorded with I votes from those in attendance, with the exception of March 20th, where Dr. Wong abstained. Moving to agenda item 5, update from the Department of Consumer Affairs.
Good morning, Vice President Burke and members. My name is John Burke, and I'm a manager of DCA's Board and Bureau Relations team. It's good to see you again. Thank you for the opportunity to update you on the activities of the department. In February, Governor Brown appointed Alexis Podesta as Secretary of the Business, Consumer Services and Housing Agency, where she has served as Undersecretary since 2015. Also in February, DCA Director Alec Kadani accepted a new opportunity. Governor Brown appointed Dean Grafilo as Director. Prior to his appointment, Director Grafilo was Chief of Staff to Assemblymember Potter since 2012. The homecoming for Director Grafilo began as a former Commissioner on the Athletics Commission. Director Grafilo joined the department on March 20th, 2017, and we're very excited. Your EO will be receiving an invitation for a meeting with Director Grafilo very soon. The department will host its next executive brown bag gathering next Tuesday, April 25th. As you remember, the brown bag gathering is an opportunity for executives throughout the department and boards to network and collaborate on issues. Tuesday's agenda includes a presentation on how to constructively manage difficult or confrontational conversations, as well as a panel discussing the regs process. We would like to thank Executive Officer Seidman for always participating in the brown bags. Looking forward to May, the Governor's proposed changes to the 2017-18 state budget. Also known as the May revise will be announced next month. The deadline for the legislature to approve the state budget is June the 15th. Also in May, the department will release its new strategic plan. Like the board strat plan, the department's executive team developed it with the assistance of Solid and outlines DCA's goals and objectives for the next 4 years. When the new plan is released in May, we will email it to all board members, so please be looking out for it. Regarding the Breeze system, good news to share, use of Breeze by the board's licensees continues to grow. Since January 1st, 2017, 66% of all optometrist renewals and 68% of optometrist exam applications were received online. Of the renewals via Breeze, 91% were processed in 1 day or less, compared to paper renewals, which are processed in 1 to 2 weeks, assuming that the application is complete. As you are aware, registered dispensing opticians are in the Breeze system under the medical board currently. RDOs will be moved to the optometry board in the Breeze system in late spring, early summer of this year. DTA's Office of Information Services staff continues to work closely with the EO to ensure the transfer is successful. The board currently has 45 Breeze system updates submitted, 29, or more than half, are related to the RDO license move. Finally, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the board members for completing the annual Form 700 early this month. I'd like to remind you that 2017 is a mandatory sexual harassment prevention training year for the department. This means all employees and board members are required to complete the training in 2017, even if it was completed last year. The training is online, interactive, and can be completed at your convenience. If you have questions on this or any other required trainings during your tenure as a board member, please contact the board and Bureau Relations team for assistance. This concludes the DCA update, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burke.
All right, our executive officers report.
So I wish John was up here just to speak for me so we can all hear that accent. But he had to step with me. So I don't just go over what John just said, just to quickly reiterate, Breeze is amazing for us. We did have a question during our sunset hearing about Breeze. Donna did testify, and so did Dr. Chawla, about how happy we are with the Breeze system, how efficient it's making all of our processes. And Donna was quoted in an online blog article, I believe, saying, giving positive feedback for Breeze. So I think that was great. We are scheduled to go live and Breeze the RDO program in the end of May. We have 3 staff dedicated to data validation and data conversion and the UAT, the same process that the board had followed for the optometry side. We're going through that with the RDO side as well. Kelly and Sheree are part of that team, helping to make sure that the data is correct, that's going to go over into the system in the right parts of it, and they're going to also participate in the user acceptance testing where they try to identify any issues prior to the go live. So we are hoping that's staying on target with the end of May.
Question on that? What, do we have a kind of like a marketing plan to make sure that the RDOs understand how great the system is and the benefits to them and things like that? What's that?
So right now, what we do have the associations. We have NAO and CATO to distribute information to. We have limited emails. I think out of the 4,000 registrants we have maybe 100 emails that were carried over from the medical board. So it's not a substantial amount. We're working to correct that, to add emails to get that word out quicker. But we will be putting something on our website. We can also send letters out to all of the registrants to their address of record. And that's kind of what we're limited to since we don't have that email address.
So when would that happen? Would we do a mailer to them? Like hey, give us your email so that you can be a part of this new change. What's the time for that?
We can do that. We'll probably write that up next week and send it out for the following week.
Ruby, do you have access to email?
We also have the California Society for Opticians. We do have a few, not a lot. You can reach out to us.
Great.
And then I'm also thinking, how about directly to the employers who employ all the opticians?
Yeah.
They can get out to. They have internal web pages that will start telling the opticians this is what's going on now.
Thank you. Okay, so on to our budget. Both fund positions are projected to do well with both of them having reversions. For the optometry budget, we are only projected to expend, we only expended 61% of our budget so far. We're projected to revert a good amount back into the fund. For the RDO fund condition, we've only spent 31% of the budget, but that's because of the fund condition that it was in. In the fund condition that we provided from the budget office, it is projected to sustain itself right now, but as you all know, we're watching it very closely to make sure the actuals match what's projected.
Just what do you mean by revert?
I'm sorry, to put it goes into the actual fund. So it goes into our, so in reversion, that's how many months we have to sustain itself if we didn't get any more funds. You know what I'm saying? So it helps if we are hit with a big enforcement case that we didn't have in the budget that pulls from that.
There be someplace, somewhere, or maybe that the loan gave the state was to be paid back.
It's scheduled to be paid back. It hasn't been, but it's for this fiscal year. So, and I heard that it's coming in because we were talking about how the fund has 16 months in reserve, and so we don't absolutely have to have it yet. So we were talking about an option to postpone that repayment, but the governor put it in his budget to have it.
It's in his current budget that
Correct.
will be voted on in June? Or is it this fiscal year?
It's this fiscal year.
So we would get it when, June 30th?
Yeah, we should get it June 30th.
We should.
All of it, some of it?
All of it.
And that's just the optometry, not RDO,
Correct, because the RDO didn't have a loan.
Jess, is this the right time to ask you a question on the analysis of fund condition?
Sure.
Okay. On the backup page, could you explain under expenditures, disbursements, the difference between 1110 and 1111? They're both labeled as program expenditures.
Yeah, so that a lot has to do with the how it's just being coded in the systems because it's going from one system into another system.
Okay.
So that's why there's two, but in the future it's just going to go into one, but you have to see it in both because they're moving.
Okay. That was page 50. And then on page 51, the travel and, can we obtain some benefit? Yeah.
Okay, we've had a lot of meetings.
Okay.
I'll let you.
Yeah, so we've had probably the most amount of meetings we've ever had in the history of the board. And even though a lot of them are teleconferences, we still have to pay all the travel costs for going to the locations, and that's really what the travel costs are and why they're so high.
But aren't most of them local? So how much travel are you paying for teleconference calls?
Whoever is going to those meetings.
Yeah, but, 212, can we get backup on where is all this money being,
Yeah,
more
but we-
detail on that?
Remember how the budget is developed? They do the previous years of how we operated. And this board was not meeting as frequently.
But I guess my question is, we've not had as many in-person, we've not increased the number of in-person. Most of them are teleconference meetings. Most of the teleconference meetings, what's the farthest someone drives for a teleconference meeting?
Well, we've had the teleconference meetings, we've also had more committee meetings and work group meetings.
But aren't most of those being teleconference?
There's some that are teleconferences, but some people are also attending in person. But what I'd be happy to do is we can do a breakdown at the next meeting of what the actual travel costs have been for the next fiscal year, so you guys can see where the money is coming from.
So then for fiscal year 17-18, DCA will do the budget?
So it's part of the budget process and so in order to change anything that's in that budget, we would have to submit a BCP, which is budget change proposal, and go through the process to change it.
Even for travel?
For everything in the budget stone in the governor's budget, we would have to submit a BCP to change anything line item.
So we can't take money from another line item?
So that, Well, not in the budget stone, but essentially that's what if you look at the bottom line of the budget, that's why we're not in the red, you know what I'm saying? So it's still, you can still, if you save money here, we can are taking money from other places, but it won't be in the budget unless we go through the budget change proposal process. So that's why at the bottom, even though you have some that are red and over the budget because we're making savings other places, then we're okay for the budget.
No, I get it, it just, it's just, I think we should be able to, if anyone asks.
Yeah.
That we should be able to let them know this is why and have justification, because this is not our money, it's,
Right.
it's the money of optometrists. So we need to be able to say, this is why that line item is so high. I just think for perception reasons, it's important that we understand that.
And then I have a comment, if I may.
Yeah.
Now with our usage of the WebEx, and maybe finding other more public locations, like I have had some pretty good experiences with community colleges where they do have rooms. If we can find more locations that are closer to people who need to attend the teleconference meetings, would that help us save on the travel costs?
If it's closer to where that board member is and they're not traveling to get to that meeting, then that would help.
So if I'm more than willing to help, at least in my area, to find more locations that way, so that we don't have to travel as much.
Okay.
I would just suggest the same backup process that you're going through for the optometry budget. You do so for the RDO as well, because even travel and stay there exceeds the budget.
Okay.
Any other discussion on the budget? You
So
will also,
I have a question. Do you charge some travel for board members to the RDO budget as well? I'm just asking.
No, there shouldn't be.
Could you though, since I'm just asking. Does that make sense? Can you split how you're charging for, because it's not combined as one fund yet, is there a way, I'm just curious.
Let me research that with the budget office and see if that's a possibility, and I can bring that back to the board.
Because I know when I've had grants and stuff, you could split up, percentage-wise, and you charge some off to one budget, some off to another budget. I'm just asking.
Like for this meeting.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're talking about RDO stuff, so could a percentage of travel be pushed onto that budget, because that's coming from a different pocket of funds, but so it kind of seems like we're spending a lot of money on the optometry budget. Some of our expenses now should be split between both of the funds.
I had a question about facilities operation.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Facilities operation?
yes,
So that was also
that
higher.
is high.
Yeah, so that's always going to be high because of what the location we're at is not within the budget. So we're at 186% over, and that has been that way since we moved into the location.
You've been at for years.
Right, so the
Yeah. So we have submitted some budget change proposals in the past to get them approved, but it doesn't meet the criteria to fit it. And because our fund at the end of the day, where the fund is still okay, it hasn't been a red flag. However, our lease is terminated. I think we have a couple years left, and the process for a new lease is 18 months. So we're starting that process now. So hopefully we can renegotiate the lease amount right now.
So just, since we talked about this before, people who are doing this, these questions about board members I think are important, and a brief answer, summary of the answer by the executive director should probably be the least that we So look back and then look at the meeting that we did. So that's an example.
Thank you.
Oh. Sorry.
Any other comments on the budget? You will note that the printing is also a little high, and we credit the sunset before.
We printed several of the thick books to distribute out to everybody, so that's why that's.
Money well spent.
Yeah. So briefly over the personnel update, our assistant executive officer has been on leave and he returned in May. What we had done, so it doesn't impact the board, is we took our retired annuitant who has a lot of management experience. We reclassed her position to be able to fill in temporarily, so the staff still has a manager on site to assist with any issues. She has been phenomenal, and she has met a lot of deadlines that I otherwise would not have met. So I'm super appreciative for her, and once she'll go back to the licensing unit and help assist with them after Rob returns. We also have our vacant policy analyst position. Since Joanne has moved on, we received 176 applications that I will now go through and vet. We have a whole system to rank them, decide interviews. So that I'm going to spend 2 full days going through those next week and hopefully have interviews in early.
The HR for the state doesn't help you with that?
No.
They can't, I would assume that they're giving you the ranking system.
No, so we create it and we send it to them as part of the RPA package, which is request for personnel action. We send them what our criteria is and they approve it, and then it's up to us to go through and verify it meets the criteria.
That's what we have to do for the EO process as well.
I'm just amazed that they can't vet some of these people for you and give you a
Smaller list.
Yeah, like this is
Smaller
the
pool
list.
of
Yeah.
people. 2 days of looking through resumes sounds like a really, or
Awesome
application seems like an unbelievable amount of time.
Yeah, I mean, that
Yeah.
seems ridiculous.
Can't you do like a top 20?
No,
It's not like,
it is electronic.
so you can't even get people out of it who just don't even meet the minimum. I would assume out of 176, there's probably some that don't even meet the minimum qualifications.
Well, with state civil service, there's not a lot of minimum qualifications, and if they're put onto the list, then they've either certified that they've already met the requirements, or they've taken a test.
Do you have to take, you have to take the test in order to?
Depending on the position, yeah, there's tests that they take to get onto it, and so if
You get qualified for positions.
yeah, exactly,
You usually rank and reachable.
yeah,
So
yeah.
most of the time what happens, members, is you call what's called ranked and reachable, which means you have to be on the top 3 ranks to be considered a position. Once you're on the top 3 ranks, there could be 100 people that are ranked 1, ranked 2, and ranked 3.
4,000.
4,000, and if they're all eligible and they submit it to the appointing power, which is the case of the board, then the board essentially has to code through everybody who's, because you don't think that if you're ranked 1, 2, or 3, that just means you're eligible to be appointed. It's not like you're the best, it just means you're eligible. So that's why the burden is upon the board staff, in this case, to code through those.
Yeah, and you kind of have to look at it as an investment time spent too, because when you have someone else doing it, they might think this person meets this criteria and the experience that we're looking for, and I could look at the same thing and say that's not relevant to us at all. So while it does take time, I think it is an investment. I mean, that is how we got Kelly, it's how we got Joanne, because I've met that criteria. So I think, yes, it takes a lot of time, but I think it's necessary to get the right staff in the right places.
Just a question on procedure with that. And so you have however many hundreds of applications to review. When you decide that you're not going to choose an applicant, is there a requirement that you list why that person was not chosen?
No, but that's part of the reason why. So if we were audited later on, we do have a spreadsheet that ranks each person. So and then based on the score that they get, those are ones that are chosen. So if at any time we were asked why did this person not, we can go to their score and say, well, this is because they scored here. So we have it if they ever ask.
And I say a person scores the highest, and you don't choose that person. Can that person come back to the board and say that they were unfairly?
Yeah, anyone can come back and say that, but if they did score the highest, we've had cases where they score the highest and we interview them and someone else would be a better fit, so we went with that person, but I think that's justifiable and we would be able to do that. But anyone can make that complaint that they were targeted.
Like,
Yeah, they can,
not just because, you know, when my company interviews somebody, we keep all interviews on file, and we can justify
we
everything we
keep them
did.
as well.
That's, okay. 2 days, huh?
Well, that's my goal.
2 days on that, 2 9.
So also I wanted to mention for the RDO, for the personnel, we do have still the 0.5 office technician and a 0.6 special investigator that we were given. Those are extremely tough positions to fill, given the partial positions, and also special investigator is a pretty low paying rank. So what I'm hoping to do, and I'm working with HR, to combine them, essentially reclass it to a staff service analyst position for full time to help with the clerical and take over the enforcement caseload of the RDO side. So until I get those changed, I can't fill the positions. But I do think doing this is going to be able to help with recruitment and retaining the staff. And then I would like to take the remaining 0.1 position and put it in, make the 0.9, the MSC position, make that whole. So at the end of the day, I'm hoping to have 2 full-time employees for the RDO program. It's just a process we have to follow for the state. And then the last personal update I have, and we can talk more about the bill during that agenda item, but we did have, as Autumn Burke's office held a press conference for AB 1110. We encouraged all staff to attend. If they have children, we wanted them to attend as well and be out there in support of the bill. And I also thought that the staff who didn't have children, we still want them to attend too, because I think this was a great learning opportunity to show them how the process works in action. And I think it was a great first-hand experience. I don't know, staff, if you thought it was beneficial or.
Yeah, it was really good. It was interesting to see the whole process and what goes behind it.
You saw a lot going behind it.
I was there, I think it was excellent, excellent work. It was a lot of work, but it was excellent, yeah. I enjoyed it thoroughly.
Right. Yeah, I think it was really successful. And even if all these hearings are all available to view online, but there's so much more that's happening behind the scenes that no one sees. And so I really think that it's important for staff to understand when they are the ones who are either enforcing the law or they're explaining it to an applicant, they know that when these statutes are put in place, this is the process we go through every time to make a change. So I think it was a great learning experience for everybody.
I also want to add a couple comments. First off, thank you, Jessica, our executive officer, for the communication it took to offer the opportunity to our staff. It was great to have the staff there, knowing that we're having their support. It's a unanimous thing that this board is supporting up to this point. And to have the staff also supporting it, I think, shows additional strength. And then, for those of you who didn't get to see it, to have the kids there really kind of was the icing on the cake, because they were so cute. They had little signs. They were so well behaved. It was just a really great experience. It really motivated me as well. So thank you to the staff as well as to Jessica for getting out coordinated.
Okay, so on to examination licensing programs. Before you, I gave you a projected schedule for the exam development workshops. We're working on recruiting subject matter experts for those workshops. I also provided the proposed schedule from the Office of Professional Examination Services for the occupational analysis. So that's the proposed schedule, and they will be here at a future meeting. The next one is in Sacramento. The meeting will be in January, so they'll provide an update of where we are so far, give an overview of what they found, and so that presentation is coming. We also started our outreach to the third-year students. Dr. Wong accompanied some staff and provided an outreach effort to UC Berkeley. I think it was received well by both the students, and we got positive feedback from staff and Dr. Wong. And do you want to add a little?
No, the students, so it's kind of hard for them because these are all third years who still have one more year before they graduate, but they really appreciated getting all this information ahead of time, even though they are not applying for licenses for a whole other year. But this is the only time that we can really reach them before 1 week after graduation. So a lot of them did say that they really appreciated all the information, getting the heads up about when they could take the law exam and when they can actually even start the application process.
Yeah, so a reason why we started, it was originally going to the fourth years, but by the time that we had gone out there to present to them, they had already applied and started the process because they can apply a year before they graduate. So we wanted to catch them prior to graduation to make sure they understand all what is required, the process to follow. So we really wanted to catch them before that happened and provide any kind of feedback and also start that relationship with the student and the board. So we do have a presentation scheduled on May 10th at SCCO and Western on May 11th. So Rob and I will be going out to give that presentation mainly because we were already planning on going out to work with the schools on streamlining the licensing process. We are going to hopefully get them on board to do electronic transcripts instead of sending mail and talk about any other efficiencies that we can do. So while we were there, we figured we might as well present to the students as well and get the most out of our travel. So with that, members, I also provided some licensing statistics and I was for optometry, and I was going to provide some statistics for the RDO program. Looking more into what we have and learning more with the data conversion and looking at the data, it looks like for the RDO program, what was considered pending isn't truly pending numbers because they do have the authority and regulation to abandon an application after 1 year, but it doesn't look like that was happening. So we have to really research each application that's open, and in many cases they were moved over from the medical board, and so our staff didn't even have any knowledge of the pending applications, and we don't know if they're truly pending or if something else happened and it just wasn't keyed correctly. So we're having to go back and look at all of the applications that are showing us pending and find out if they should have been expired. And so that's going to take some more research, and we weren't able to provide that.
Just for me to answer this question. So I'm looking at this chart and trying to understand what average cycle time means for a particular month.
Yes. So.
Go ahead.
Okay, so and another thing that I should have mentioned is, especially for the OPT, the optometry license statistics, I don't think that right now those are as beneficial as they can be to the members, board members and members of the public. I don't think a lot of people understand what a 1010 is and a 1020 is. And so what I am working on with OIS and GCA's team is to find a better way to make it more useful to the board members, to show them, because a received application 1010, that's actually just to get them to sit for the California law exam. So that's what that average cycle time frame is for, once they apply, the only requirement for them to take the law exam is that they're 18 years of age. So it's a time frame for that point in time, but then it doesn't capture after that how long it takes once they pass that exam to get licensed. That's the 1020. The 1020 application is from the date that they're approved to sit for the exam to the time that they're licensed. But even in that time frame, that a lot of that depends on the information that the student provides, the candidate provides. So, and since they can apply a year ahead of time, they haven't even graduated yet. So that time frame is not really indicative of how long it's actually taking staff because they can apply up to a year in advance. So we're looking at ways to streamline that. We did make some changes in the brief system to identify the time frame that was on the candidate and then the time frame that was on staff. So we're looking at basically reformatting how the statistics are provided so they're more useful to the board members and the public.
So based on that explanation, what you're saying is it's not as simple as just saying that the clock starts ticking once the applicant has everything they're supposed to have, including transcripts as an example. We can't, there's not an easy way to just track that, right? So we have to figure out.
Right.
Okay.
That's what we're working on. That's my goal to get to.
So actually my question is even more fundamental. So let's take the green chart.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this average cycle time for 1010,
mm-hmm.
and for September it says 13. So does that mean that in your office, there are applications, and the average time for each of those applications for this average cycle time, I don't know the average cycle time tracks, is 13 days.
It's 13 days, but it's from the time we receive the application to the time that they're qualified to sit for the law exam. So we approve them to sit for the law exam. That's what that 13 days is.
And so they uptick to 77 in March, Q3 for the 1020.
Yeah, so the 1020, that's the time frame that they are approved to sit for the exam, to the time that they're actually licensed. So in between, you're looking at them studying and taking the exam. They have to graduate if we didn't receive transcripts. So that's where a lot of that time we're waiting on information from the candidate to tell us what their qualifications are. That also encompasses if we have an enforcement case, if they have convictions, that time is all part of that.
And transcripts are currently on the paper.
They are, yeah.
So they have to wait for the registrar's office at all the schools to send it physically by US mail.
Yeah, so that's what we're in May, we're hoping to streamline that process. Okay, so on to enforcement. We do have Kelly here. She is helping set up our inspection program. She's been researching other boards, what they have been doing, how they're tracking it. Their authority seems to come, how their authority is broken up is all across the board. And so we're trying to really analyze what the best option is for the board to set up this program. We want to learn from the best practices and also from any thing that they've had found difficult. We want to make sure that we don't repeat that. So Kelly, do you want to add a little more to what you found so far?
Yeah, so far my questions to the boards and bureaus that I have been in contact with have been, how many staff they have in their inspection unit. Are inspections solely complaint-based, or do they also conduct routine inspections? If routine inspections are done, how they determine what licenses are inspected. So I would like to meet in person with the different boards, for instance, the Board of Pharmacy. I did come from Vet Med, the Veterinary Medical Board, so I know how they do that, how they run their inspection unit. And then I would also like to get in contact with the Dental Board and then the Board of Cosmetology and Barbering. So I would be happy to provide an update at the next board meeting.
And when we look at even little things for their inspectors, what classification of inspectors they are? Because they have just inspector 1, inspector 2, they have special investigators, or you can have DFI do it, or you can have an analyst do it, or you can contract with a subject matter expert and do it. So there's all these different ways to implement an inspection program, and we want to look at a cost analysis for all of that and find out what the best option is for us given our resources.
Kelly, the boards that you've identified, how did you determine that those were the ones you wanted to do?
I did my own research. I literally went down DCA's main webpage and then went to each board's website. I also emailed the different boards in case I missed one. I also got in contact with the Breeze team to see what boards use the inspection module, which would use an enforcement module with an inspection case type. And then I'm also waiting for OIS, so they get back to me to see if there's any, because there's still 19 boards that use CAS. So I'm waiting to hear back from them to see what boards use inspections in there.
So we went to all of them.
I did it.
So similarly, we're doing that with the CE. Right now, in the short term, we were able to revise our audit letter to highlight more of the option to add their OE tracker number, and in lieu of the OE tracker number, if they have all of the documentation in there, they wouldn't have to mail the documentation to us. If they just gave us the OE tracker number, all of that information is stored into the database that we accept according to the regulation. So we're finding that has been helpful. A lot of them are sending in the OE tracker number. I do believe that we're gonna get more numbers, and right now the REIS system isn't set up to track that. So I think we're gonna probably do a SIR, which is a change request in the system to have a field just for that. But until then, I think we're gonna just track it internally, so when that happens again, we can work on that. Matt has also reached out to several boards within DCA to find out what their process is for the CE audits. And do you want to add anything to that one?
Yeah, he's looking at all of the boards that require CE and how they track whether or not the licensees have complied with it, how they conduct audits, how they choose who gets audited and who doesn't, what percentage they audit, how those letters go out and how they get the responses. So like the whole scope of how those audits are conducted, just so that we can kind of have a better idea of what is done overall and what those best practices are going forward with us. Because ours is kind of a unique. Our CE is a little bit unique, I think, for DCA in that we have different types of CE you guys have to have, and we have to make sure that you fit that. So it's kind of finding what's out there and what's going to best fit us.
And as part of that, this is right now the short-term goal, but as you know, we're also researching other options that we had discussed at the February board meeting? One of the previous board meetings. And we're going to still work with DCA to find out any efficiencies that we can build into Breeze to truly improve the CE audit process. So this was a short term, and we're looking at a lot more research for the long-term goal that we'll provide at a future board meeting.
I just want to thank you for all the work on doing that. I think that in the long run, it's not only going to help this board, but I think it could use as an example for other boards. So thank you for doing all that.
We actually got the same kind of comment and during the sunset hearing. I think it was actually Senator Pan who had thanked us for the work that we're looking into for the CE audit process and said that we could be an example for other boards. So it was nice. One of the things I am encouraging staff is instead of just doing an email to a bunch of people that they don't know, I encourage them to have any kind of in-person meetings and see firsthand how they're tracking CE audits or inspections, see how they're organizing, because I want them to really start using and forming relationships within DCA. So if we have any other questions, we already have those relationships built where we can reach out to people.
I know it's premature. I would imagine this too will help with the upcoming, we haven't discussed yet about the opticians having to have a seat. That will also be there too.
Yeah, that's also come up.
Okay.
So with that, members, I have provided some statistics for the optometry enforcement program and the REO enforcement programs. As you can see, we've been pretty busy with referring more and more cases to the AG's office because we, as a result of us being fully staffed, were able to get into the enforcement pending cases. So you're going to be seeing, if you looked at the expenditure report for enforcement, we were pretty low this time in the year, but you're going to see the next few months toward the end of the fiscal year, it's going to jump up pretty significantly, and next year it's going to increase more because we are sending more cases to the AG and proceeding with the discipline.
I have a question on the chart whenever you're ready.
Okay, you ready?
So, let's ask this question. Is there a systemic hang-up for the high priority cases, where I see that the days pending are in the 600 day, or the 700 day pending.
Right.
Here.
So, and I can defer to Sheree in a second, but you can correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of these high priority cases are not even low. I think there were 4 high priority cases. 2 left. But these cases are related to settlement cases. So what we get is basically a quick summary of what the settlement was. And so based on the information we have, we would rank it high priority because it sounds like something really bad happen, but then we have to reach out to all those involved and try to get if we get medical records, we get a response from the subject or get a response from any parties that were involved. And a lot of times after they do a settlement, they don't want to cooperate with any kind of investigation because the settlement's already over, they're happy with what happened. And sometimes attorneys would recommend to their clients not to respond to us because they've already settled it and they don't think that it's needed. So a lot of we'll keep the case open until we've exhausted every kind of measure that we have on our end to get any information out of this. So a lot of that takes time in order to exhaust every kind of resource possible, because from the little information that we have, I mean, we're not even given the actual settlement report, right? We're just getting a quick summary. So we aren't getting the settlement and we don't have all the facts involved. So they stay open until you've exhausted every avenue.
So is that the case for all the cases that have been pending a long time?
I don't know.
For the high priority ones?
Yes.
So the high priority ones, they get categorized that way because based on DCA's guidelines for how to categorize cases, they contain allegations of actual consumer harm, which is how they went through the settlement process. Until we can prove otherwise, they're capped as high priority cases. Sometimes once we are able to get records and send a case to the expert will say, you know, there's no reason that an optometrist should have caught this, or maybe the optometrist did tell this person that they needed to see a specialist and that person didn't go because they didn't feel it was important enough. But the case is settled because maybe the insurance company doesn't want to go to a hearing, or for whatever reason. So it could be a situation where there may have been consumer harm, but it wasn't necessarily the fault of the licensee, and so we're going to downgrade that back to a routine priority case and close it without action because our licensee was not at fault. But because it comes to us as an allegation of patient harm, it gets opened as a high priority case. And as Jessica said, with these types of cases, it can be really hard to get all of the records we need to get a case to expert and have that determination made.
So re-educate me on what a settlement case is.
So a settlement case is something where a patient has filed a malpractice suit against their doctor, and as part of that process, they have settled out of court. So it hasn't gone to a hearing, there hasn't been a judge making a judgment in the order of fault. It's before that process hits, the attorneys are talking, they're settling out of court for a given amount of money. Typically there isn't an admission of fault as part of that. And then we get that notification if it's over a certain amount.
And so that's the systemic reason why that number's high. Okay. So for purposes of minutes, if the minutes could include kind of a short explanation that the executive director did have to be using for those delays.
Okay. Any other questions about enforcement or any parts of my report for the members? Yes.
This is stuff that the average licensee doesn't have a clue about. I think if there was a way to do this, the presentation that Cherie's making to optometry students about enforcement issues and things that can trigger enforcement issues, is there a way that the board could put together a presentation that they could do at a major optometric meeting like the ones that are at Berkeley or SCCO or Western, have it valid for units so people will actually be willing to come to it, and sit there for an hour and scare the hell out of everybody. Yeah, people are surprised if you were to get a drunk driving conviction. That shouldn't have any effect on your optometry license. Why would, I paid my fine, I spent my night in jail, I can't drive for 6 months, and now everything's fine. And then that famous 2-3 years later, bingo, the board's going to come to you. People need to know that those things are possible because they have no clue. Branch office licenses, statement of licensure, all those things that can cause a fine, a penalty, a suspension of your license. People don't know it. Yeah, they should be aware of the laws, but,
They took the law exam 20 years ago,
Yeah.
10 years ago.
I mean, hell, when I took the law exam, there were only 8 elements on periodic charts, so, I think it would be a great thing for, if the board could do it, if we have the funding and the ability to do something like that, put on 3 or 4 presentations throughout the year, so optometrists can get a better idea of what standards are being held.
We can look into that and bring back at a future board meeting. To offer the CE credit, we would need to have it go through the approval process, because the board can approve them, they just have to fit the criteria, so we have to.
But we as a board can approve our own CE, right? It doesn't have to go through regulations or legislatures.
As long as it fits the criteria the board's already approved, then it should be okay, but we'll put it on a future agenda item.
I'm good, just a question. When you pass your license, for your licensure exam, what kind of information do you get from the Board of Optometry? Like, hey, did you know your driving conviction can negatively impact your ability to work? Do they get information?
So a lot of the candidates, first, we are meeting with the California schools the third years to give them that information out of the gate. After that, we do send more information about the licensing process, things to expect. I do believe, but I can double check, that there's some recommendations or some laws to pay attention to, but what we can do is look at that process and maybe see if there's any way to add some frequent maybe examples of what not to do, some laws to pay attention to, how it impacts their license going forward. We can look into doing that. Another thing that we're looking at doing is not just the California schools, even though that's the bulk of our candidates, what we'd like to do is create web-based training and post it on our website and send it out to all of the schools in not just California, but all the states. So hopefully that'll help as well, and putting it on our website is additional outreach to all the licensees. But I do think we can improve on the information we can provide upon licensure.
Yeah, because there's no real, it sounds like what you're getting at, there's really no ethics training.
Not even ethics,
course.
it's basic.
People,
I
I do
guarantee
think
it.
this from ethics, but it's one of those things, like I know for the bar exam, you have to take an ethics course for your MCLE, and that does cover your most mundane things. Like literally, you're watching it going, really? People do that? Yes, they do. That's why it's on the MCLE.
You put Cherie in front of 400 optometrists at 8 o'clock in the morning, you'll be the most awake those people will ever be anymore.
I agree. I think a reminder, if we can do some kind of CE that just kind of does, it's an annual, or whoever wants to take the course, it's a reminder course of things that you should not do, or it will come back to haunt you later on.
Yeah, if I bill PSP for fraudulent exams, I can actually lose my license.
Right.
Who knew?
That should also, Mark.
So, speaking as a former kind of administrative prosecutor, the other way of getting the word out is publicizing our enforcement actions. There are two levels. The state bar, and then the state bar is separate. They publish a magazine, and at the back is the list of all the disciplined people.
That used to happen.
When the board used to mail it out, my friends and I would go right to that.
To see if there's anybody I know. Or to see if I'm not. The other thing is, other enforcement agencies, when they impose a fine or do a suspension, they issue a press release.
And that's what PPC does that.
That PPC does that, they issue a press release, and sometimes newspapers pick it up, and it's kind of like, so-and-so got their license suspended because they defrauded the LSP.
Yeah.
So that's, you just see one of those, and that's kind of enough to know that you might have to do that.
Yeah, so that's actually what we are looking into doing, because there are some boards who send out press releases. They also send out their discipline as part of the listserv that they send out. As they happen, they send out, this is effective, they took these actions. So those are things that we're looking at starting. We also did have on the biannual the newsletters that we sent out, we're looking at revamping that again and putting that on there. So all of that stuff is good, and I think we're on our way.
In this day and age of the internet, you can plug in somebody's name, pop up
Yeah.
all the enforcement actions that were.
Well, that is available. If they go to the Breeze website and they can put in any license number and it'll show any kind of
I
action.
would say it's easier nowadays. If you put
Oh, yeah.
Walk or going in, you'll see all the enforcement
Hopefully
actions.
not. Hopefully not.
There's only so much surface space.
And along with that, could that also be done for opticians?
Absolutely, yeah. We would be across the board.
So to Mark's point, the average public does not know to go to Breeze to check out a doctor before showing up for an appointment. By just doing a Google search, however, you can be more apt to see that all of the enforcement actions Sheree has taken.
As we're talking about all of this, enforcement, all that, I'd like to know, where does cannabis fit into this? Now that it's legal, what is our role in terms of how that affects a licensee?
So what I
Do we
recommend,
have to talk about, I mean, is that something
Yeah.
that we need to put on a future agenda item to discuss? Is every board having to come up with their, or is there gonna be is DCA coming up with the overall, this is how cannabis is gonna affect?
Well, I think right now, they're trying to write all the regulations
I
that
know.
are to cannabis, so it seems to me they would bootstrap this board to some degree right now, just because
Yeah,
are they gonna regulate it like tobacco, are you gonna regulate it like alcohol?
Well,
All right, well, we're moving off of the agenda, so
All right, good point.
Which one did you want to put that on the agenda for future items?
Yeah, because I think if we're also, we need to keep that in mind, because if we're talking about revamping and doing online training, if we're gonna do it, we might as well make sure it encompasses everything that can affect, because I'm thinking of some of the people that are graduating from, they may not realize that smoking marijuana could impact their license to practice in the state of California.
2 to 3 years later.
It's, well, even longer, even though it's legal.
all right, thank you, Jessica. Moving on to agenda item 7. Is there any public comment? We're gonna move on to agenda item 7, graduate team open meetings act.
I'm gonna turn it over to Kirk Heffler, our legal counsel.
Good morning, members. I think this item has raised in its significance given our recent discussion about the minutes. So, members, just want to direct your attention to pages 54, 55, and 56. The executive officer has done a wonderful job of putting together on pages 56 sort of the top 10 things to know and tips for teleconference meetings. I just want to, rather than, as Mr. Montgomery suggested, keeping my presentations brief and succinct and cogent, I'll just make a few comments about kind of the process and the things that DCA Legal looks for when we approve an agenda. We do approve agendas. They go through a comprehensive review process. And one of the things that we do look at is the sites that are selected. And one of the things that we are trending toward recommending as best practices is that there be an increased reliance when you're selecting a site on public buildings. I think Member Garcia mentioned community colleges. This board, members of this board have also used parks and recs facilities, things like that nature. We recommend that sort of thing because obviously there's been a decision and a finding made that it's good enough for one of our public agencies, and therefore there's a heavy-duty reliance that they are in fact ADA compliant, have the necessary ADA compliant structures. There is no barrier to access. There is no fee you have to pay. There is no thing you have to be buzzed in. You just perhaps sign an guard station if necessary. So that's what we're planning. We are reluctant as we review this for like residential addresses for a couple of reasons. Number one, we cannot be assured of ADA compliance. Number two, there's also a significant safety element regarding that. And number three is the Public Records Act. And once that address, that residential is posted on an agenda, it's out there forever. We can never withhold that because it's been disclosed already. So that's why there is, like I said, some reluctance to consider residential addresses. Another issue that has come up is what happens if there's a change from the notice location. And sometimes a change or variance is permissible. Let me give you an example. Suppose we had a teleconference and we assumed that the subject would be relatively benign. And so the member said, well, we'll do it at the small conference room on the third floor of whatever, some public building. And for whatever we miscalculated, and this is an item that is very important to the masses. And at 10 o'clock, there's hundreds of people, this hyperbole of course, hundreds of people waiting to talk about this. At that point, with the appropriate signage and with an agenda posted, you could move like upstairs or downstairs within the same facility to a larger room perhaps. So that is permissible. But please, as we go through this, tell the executive officer, tell the council of the pending change. I don't think would be acceptable to say, hey everybody, we're all going down the block to a new facility, because I think that strains the reasonable interpretation of the agenda. And speaking of agendas, the theory would be kind of like Ms. Brandby talked about Google, and I think Google is now respectfully a part of our lives with that Ask a Google thing or the home thing or whatever, is that when somebody Googles one of those locations to find directions, that it be a fixed and finite location that you can find. It's not, I've had not with this board, but I've had other board members suggest that, well, there's a close, we can have a meeting and we have a, how about if I say the parking spot that I'm going to be at in my car at my place of address? And one would say, I don't think that's acceptable. So again, we trend towards municipal buildings with fixed and finite locations. There is some maneuverability, if you will, to go to accommodate a crowd or more than anticipated. And then finally, perhaps the most important thing is the teleconference is obviously a way of making the meetings more accessible. There are some logistical concerns that come with that. And perhaps the most important is that if you say that you're going to be at a site, you have to be at that site. Because if you're not at the site, the meeting ends. We do have the option, of course, of making this more accessible by saying, here's a public participation site. The agenda, there won't be a member there. There won't be a member here at this site order. But if it's not agendized that way, the expectation is a member will be at that site. And if a member is not at that site, it would be my advice to the board that the meeting not proceed. So that's kind of the difference here. If you don't make it like Dr. Chung is not present today, we still have a quorum of the board, we can still move ahead. But quorum is not an issue in a teleconference if it's just one location, because if you lose that location, you lose the meeting. So that's why the executive officer undergoes Herculean efforts to make sure that the site that you identify is the site that you will attend. Because if not, then I think some of the discussion will incur a whole bunch of expenses for perhaps an unproductive event. So with that, I'll be quiet and entertain any questions, and the record can just reflect that I spoke to those two things and had a few other things to say. So thank you, members.
So that also confirms the risk that we would run if we choose a public meeting location and it's unable to accommodate the number of potential people that show up.
Right.
That could run the risk of a meeting having.
Correct. It could be as well. Like I said, I think there's some manipulation, but if there was a situation where we had hyperbole, 10 person conference room and 500 people would be, I guess it could happen. Then that would be, there would be a concern that the meeting area isn't sufficient to proceed with the meeting, because there may be issues of nobody can be housed. I mean, that would be a concern. And at that point in time, you could tell the executive officer or myself, holy smokes, there's miscalculation.
So what's the procedure if, because we're all kind of in this together, right? So if one of us violates Bailey Keene, it affects all of us, correct, as a board. So if a board member raises a concern on looking at the agenda and they feel that a meeting location is not publicly accessible, what is your responsibility as our legal counsel to make sure, because you're saying that you approve the agenda, which I would assume you approve all of the locations. So what's the procedure? How do we as a board member protect ourselves? Because I really don't want to violate it.
I don't actually approve the sites. I look at them, I don't actually Google them. I'm I will
Whose
be-
responsibility then is it to Google the sites and make sure that they're publicly accessible?
More than likely, what happened, and I don't, that's a good question. My presumption is, as your attorney, the site is selected by the member that wishes to attend that site. At that point in time, the executive officer confirms with that member that the site is ADA compliant, because we would not have a way of knowing in the legal office that you have secured the authorization to be there, indicating that you wouldn't say if we were a private institution, you would say, look, stop doing whatever you're doing on a parts store, we're taking over aisle 6 and 7, because we're having a meeting. So our presumption is that the member has secured the necessary authorization to be there. There's no time constraints, there's no anti-loitering constraints, anything like that, and that the member has made the endeavors to have the initial, the agenda and any needed signage posted. That's something that I can't see from the agenda. My suggestion would be that falls a little bit upon the member themselves and the executive officer to verify that has happened. If a member has a complaint that says this, as we're winding down, if the agenda has been published or will soon be published at some site, for to use hyperbole, is on Mars or something that, floating in the water or something like that, again, the appropriate call is to the executive officer or to myself to say, I believe one of these locations may be suspect. Please confirm that it is in fact valid via the member that selected that site.
Okay. Okay. And then, so we're basically have to trust our colleagues on the board that they're going to have the integrity to be at a location that is ADA compliant, that is accessible to the public, and that it's going to, for perception reasons, it's going to make sure that it complies with Daily King.
Correct. There would be, of course, in the past, if there was a situation where there was a meeting site that was noticed that said something untoward, like, a little asterisk, like, P.S. you have to pay to get in, or it's a grill bar, only 21 may apply, or someone may attend or something. Obviously, that would flag the legal office's attention, and we would suggest firmly that another site. But as to your initial question, yes, it's sort of the shared responsibility of the member to say, I have selected the site, and I have got the necessary authorization, and we'll post the signage along with the executive officer confirm, yeah, you have done that? Okay, good. And like I said, if there's a conflict or a concern, please let us know immediately.
So then what's the repercussion to the member? If I decide to have a meeting at my park where you have to have a key code to get into the gate, and I decide to do it there, and David files a complaint and says, I don't think Rachel was at a publicly, what happens?
Well, from the legal perspective, the action that the board took in that meeting now becomes challengeable, perhaps avoidable. That would be my primary concern. As to what happens to the member, I think the member would be perhaps instructed about the suitability of the sites going forward, so that does not happen again.
But what if it did happen again?
Probably stronger counseling, and then whatever, if there's a procedure to be followed, and I don't recall in the procedure manual if there is or not, then whatever, issues, whatever the procedure manual specified for essentially a violation of board policy, the board would follow, I'm sure the board would follow that as well.
And then another example would be is if I as a board member think David is at a location. You sat next to me.
Yeah.
Can I on a call, if we're doing a teleconference call, can I then at that moment say I will not participate in this board meeting and leave the location because I do not believe it's publicly accessible?
Yeah, if you did that, of course, the meeting would come to an end.
Well, but it's also if it's at not a publicly accessible location, the meeting then is nullified, correct?
Correct. It was challengeable, so I think it would be permissible if at a meeting would say, since location X, whoever's there, I as a board member just want to confirm that you have the necessary signage and authorization and it's publicly accessible. And if If that member responds, yes, I've done all that, then I would suggest that the meeting proceed. If in fact, the member or the site person cannot confirm that, then my advice would be, I'm not sure that we could proceed with the meeting.
Okay, then one last question. So any meeting by the law, and I read the law a couple of times, any meeting that is conducted at a non-accessible location, could then anything discussed at that meeting could be invalidated, including committee meetings, correct?
Yes.
And can any board member, even if they're not on that committee, contest a meeting if they knew that it wasn't at a publicly accessible location?
Yeah, at that point, you would be kind of cease being a board member and cease more about being a member of the public and say, I believe whatever happened there is challengeable. It could potentially be avoided by court of law.
Okay, and then I promise this is it. One question I have is
Sure.
question, is that it says on number 2, for purpose of the subdivision, telecorrected, it says, the state body from providing members of the public with additional locations in which the public may observe or address the state body by electronic means, which you touched on. Does that mean going forward, as a board for a teleconference meeting, we can provide a public number, so if someone from the public just wants to call in? Because I don't think we do that, correct? So
No.
are we required to do that is my question. So can we just give an 800 number or whatever that number is, so that if someone is in San Diego and we don't, or Fresno, and we don't have a location there, they can still call in on this number and address the board?
If the board so chooses, correct. So if you think about it, it's kind of like when you throw a rock in a pond of water. So here we have the most closed model, which is in order to say something, you come to the meeting, like that now. And so then we have the sort of the teleconference, which is we're expanding a little bit. And then you could adopt what the medical board or other boards have done, where you have literally an 800 number where you call in, and then during the meeting, it's sort of like, do we have any public comments from anybody on the line?
Okay.
You can do that if the board so chooses as well.
But if you do that, that's one pause for everything. You can't change. You can't say, oh, this meeting will have a call-in number, and then for a practice and education meeting, we're not. If you have it for one, you have to do it for
I
all.
believe you could, because there may be technical constraints that,
Oh, okay.
so that they
And
do that.
cost. So, and that's also a future agenda item that we're gonna bring back. The board had directed us to research what boards are doing that and the cost that is associated with that, so that will be brought back to the board. So that's one thing that we are researching.
Okay. Okay.
Any member of the public who hasn't fallen asleep? Asking you a question. Thank you, members. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have interview at 11. We have not had a break. We're not gonna be able to go.
We want to maybe suggest knocking through the legislation except children's vision,
Okay,
and then we can
All right.
talk to children's vision.
all right, perfect. Okay, we'll do 1:15. I'll take a break.
Yeah, it shouldn't take that long.
All right.
Okay, so AB 443 is the intended scope bill. The language still is not in print yet right now, is essentially a spot bill. I do believe it's going to be heard shortly, but there's not going to be language yet. Does Kara, of course, from COA want to come and give an update on where it stands?
Karen Perkins on behalf of the California Optometric Association. This is correct. There's no language right now. Right now what's going on is our association is negotiating with the California Medical Association, trying to come up with some form of agreement on generally a lot of provisions very similar to 622, mainly regarding the cleanup of the Practice Act. There has not been any discussion on any advanced procedures. So right now we're trying to come up with some type of consensus and move that forward on Wednesday. And that's when the bill is going to be heard. And just as kind of an update, in the Business Impressions Committee, there's going to be a chairman, Evan Lowe, who's a son of optometrist actually. So he'll be very familiar with the board's type of issues moving forward. So as soon as the language is in print, we will definitely share it. But that's kind of our intention. It's been a back and forth process, and that's why there's no language to present to you today.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, moving on to AB 767, this is the Master Business License Act. The goal, from my understanding of this bill, is to have essentially a one-stop shop for the licensees to do certain processes to apply for all business licenses across all boards. I think though, with the type of resources that this is going to do, I think a lot of it is going to essentially be duplicative of what Breeze is already doing. I think that it also may cause more confusions because the GoBiz site would only be able to apply for do certain things that Breeze does, but it wouldn't do other things like certifications or address changes or all these other avenues that Breeze already does. So it might increase confusion to the licensees as well of what website to go to. On top of that, just having this, you're going to have to create interfaces not only with each board and bureau, but with each application and each transaction type within it to do interfaces into this one portal. So I think while the intent is good to have this one-stop shop, I think that there could be other ways to address the concern. And I think that the preliminary cost that was done is substantial. And it's my understanding that was just including business licenses, because that's how it was worded in the bill. However, after further discussion, it appears that they want all licenses, which are individual licenses as well, so that cost is also going to increase significantly. I do think right now that we should just watch this bill as it progresses, and in August see what happens with this bill to see if we want to take a formal position, because I think the cost alone could make the auditor's office rethink a better way to address this, and I don't know if the board wants to take a position yet.
Jessica, has this been discussed in the Ledge Reg committee at all?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Do you know why she's introducing the bill? Who's supporting it? Do you know who's sponsoring it? I can't find it on the internet.
I can find that out. I don't know who's sponsoring it. Authors, but I don't know who's sponsoring.
It's coming up.
Yeah, that's the author, but we want to find out who's sponsoring.
Rachel's in there.
I'm not sure if it says on there who the sponsor is.
Go to the bill analysis.
She's
No, because it's preliminary, so there hasn't been any analysis available for us to send to the members or link to the members. Because it is so early in the session, there's not a lot of movement yet on it, which is why I think we could just watch it and see what happens with it.
Sorry. Do you know when it's supposed to be heard in committee?
I don't think it didn't have a hearing date by the time I sent this. There was no hearing date listed.
Yeah, I haven't heard yet. Okay.
I think it's good for us to keep it on future agendas because I could see that there could be some potential benefits to us as well as the board. So as just a sample example, it's not on this right now, but if you are going to have a business with the state, you have to register a DBA, but yet as a board, we also have, it's almost like a duplication when we have to submit a fictitious name. So there could be benefits to us, even though there might be costs to us, so it'll be interesting to see how things progress.
Yeah, and so with that, it wouldn't get rid of that requirement. You would still have to do both. So it's just an additional, you just go to one place and do it all, but it wouldn't get rid of any requirements. And on top of that, one thing that I did mention is that there's going to be an additional cost to the licensee to do that. So if they were to go to our site, there's just the normal cost, but if they go to this website and do it, there's additional cost onto it, or if they just go to Breeze, they don't incur that cost. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Any questions on that one?
When is the legislative committee scheduled to meet next?
I don't think we have set a time since the committees will meet on an as-needed basis at the request of either the board or the committee. So we haven't set it, but perhaps we can discuss that with the committee and get one on the books. So it's my understanding that we're going to come back to AB 1110. So that goes to our board sunset bill. Right now it's still in its infancy stages. There hasn't been a hearing set. There's not the language in that we had recommended, but I am in close communication with the SMBNP and with the chair being changed recently. It's unclear who's going to author the bill, whether it's going to go over to Heaven Low or if Solace is going to continue to carry it. But I am confident that with the communication, it does appear that we're going to be extended for 4 years, and they haven't expressed any kind of concerns of putting our requested amendments into the sunset bill. But right now, there's just not much of an update because it's still in its infancy stages. Okay, so that brings us over to SB 572, and so I do have an update on this one, because this was, even though it's pretty early in the session, I had some significant concerns with the consumer protection, and I believe this would be removing with allowing this grace period. I did reach out to DCA Ledge office to see if they had spoken with the author's office directly. They didn't have they hadn't at that point talked to Stone's office, so I reached out to them this week, and I expressed, not this week, yeah, really this week, sorry, every day is the same to me, and I reached out and I said what my concerns were, just from a staff standpoint of consumer protection and what this bill is doing. They did provide an update that it won't be heard on Monday as scheduled, and I believe that's now posted on their website. They are postponing the hearing again. They have talked, they're now discussing making it either into a 2-year bill or pulling it if there's other administrative remedies that they can do.
When you finish, I ask for comments.
Okay, so I mean that was essentially, right now it won't be, it doesn't look like it's going to be actually heard this session. It looks like they are making it a 2-year bill, if anything. So that was just my update with the bill.
So when I read the description of this, my reaction was, you gotta be kidding. Because this could seriously affect consumer protection. There's in 2 ways. One is the terminology of the bill talks about so long as there's no irreparable harm. That's a legal term of art, and what that means is, in the court of law, it means that money damages won't compensate for the injury. So, for example, if an optometrist were to do whatever, take my eye out, the court of law would say, that's reparable harm, because that eye is worth $1 million. And if that were to happen under this bill, it seemed to me that there was no enforceable action under our jurisdiction. Second, again, I haven't read the actual text of the bill, but this would not prevent kind of yo-yo violations. You violate a particular provision of our laws, you fix it within 50 days. You do it again, you fix it. You do it again, you fix it. I mean, in all normal circumstances, we go after that person, right? So those are many concerns I have. The third and last point I want to make is this is not the kind of issue that I really appreciate Jessica being on the ball and contacting me with that. It's very commendable. But the little old board of optometry should not be leading the charge on that. I fully expect that the Department of Consumer Affairs would be on this budget, like white on rice, because this affects all the healing arts professions, and the power of the Department of Consumer Affairs should be marshaled against this as opposed to justice. So, does the department have any comment?
The department has no comment on this bill at this time. It is being analysed by the department, and that analysis will be shared up through agency to the governor's office. The department can't take a position. It can take a position on a bill, but it has to be approved by the administration. That's and that's not something that has happened at this point. It is a bill that's being watched, but the boards are semi-autonomous. You can take positions on really whatever bills you like independently. DCA could hypothetically oppose a bill that you supported. That's
Sure.
That's
I don't want to
possible.
clarify, I'm not saying any time that they're not on top of it. It was just at that time they hadn't reached out to the Stone's office because they did get a fact sheet from the analyst working the bill, but they had not reached out. So I just know because of the time constraints we were having with our Friday's board meeting, I wanted to reach out to them ahead of time or to give them and heads up that we're talking about this during the board meeting. These are the concerns that I have, because I don't want them to be blindsided either. So they are working, they did say that whatever happens going forward, she'll continue to discuss those with me. I can let her know what my concerns are in writing, and so we can keep that communication open. But I don't want to have it seem like DCA is not, because they are, and they just hadn't had a chance to call before I did.
I have a concern, because aside from the definition of reparable versus irreparable harm, you're giving a 15-day grace period, but at what point do you determine that there was any harm that was incurred? That's not going to show up for a certain period of time. And I think it just opens a lot of things to interpretation later on after the fact if there's a grace period involved. At what point do you know there's harm?
Right. And so those were specific things too that I had talked to their staff about, is the not knowing what irreparable harm is, that's not defined in there, and the questions and the owners that would put on the board to prove whether or not it was irreparable harm and have it to go to ALJ to decide. The 15 days from what? 15 days from the date of the violation that occurred, 15 days from the day that we notified them of the violation. So they see, and she didn't seem receptive to any kind of technical changes that would clarify that, because I don't think that was their intent. But the overall concept of giving a grace period for breaking consumer protection statutes, I think it was a bigger concern. So for me, anyway, and so even if we give them corrections to address it, I think that the concept in itself is.
Well, the last thought, it's not like we don't take into this board, that other boards don't take into consideration efforts to fix the problem, right? And in all our enforcement matters, we take that into consideration very seriously.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm not sure what the problem is.
Yeah, well, and just one more thing. Thank you for that comment, because that also reminds me, when I did talk to the office, I explained what our typical enforcement process is and how a lot of these cases, if they are minor violations, we close it with an educational letter once they have complied with it, and we don't take any action. But if we do, some do require a citation because something else had occurred, and those are all governed through the regulations that we have. And so while we do have a cap onto the statute, we have to take into account the regulations that look at the gravity of the violation, whether it's a willful disregard of the law, and all boards that to my knowledge, that have statutes for citations, they all have to follow their same regulation. And so when I was letting the staff know that, they had asked the question, well, what happens if the board consistently does not follow the regs that they have? The comment was made that there was no repercussions for them, which isn't true, because if they're consistently not going by what the regulation says, then that can be considered an underground regulation, and we would file a complaint with the Office of Administrative Law or whoever is complaining. So there are remedies, so I think it was more of an educational to see there are other administrative remedies to address the issues. So I think that's what the office is looking at, whether or not they need to proceed with a 2-year bill or look at the other remedies involved.
And with that,
just a really quick one. So not just for the specific bill, but also just in general, if you could include, there's a sponsor or who is supporting or opposing, that would be also helpful.
Okay. All right, with that, we can continue. We still have 2 more bills to discuss, but I'm going to break right now so that we can get the interview. So if you can be back here in 5 minutes, please. Thank you.